My name is Charlie Sartain. I've been a member of St. Michael since 1985. I've been a Sunday school teacher. I've been senior warden. I've been president of the foundation. I'm an acolyte. In my other life, I'm a partner at Gray Reed. It's a law firm in Dallas and Houston. My specialty is commercial litigation, mostly energy and healthcare, but other things as well. So what I want to talk about today is how a lawyer can use his or her time and talent and energy to serve God. That can be done, but it's difficult, and that's some of the challenges is what we'll talk about. I'm not here to give answers, that's for sure. I'm here to make observations. It's not about overarching issues of social justice and the like. That's not what I do, and I'm not qualified to really talk about it. My perspective is from a lawyer who deals with clients. So this is addressed to lawyers and to clients, actually, my observations today. This is not about legal ethics. We have enough rules in legal ethics. This is more to understand why we do what we do and a search for the spiritual dimension of what lawyers do. If we think about that, then perhaps we can have a more centered and deeper understanding of what it is that we're called to do and what it is that we actually do every day. A lawyer has a duty to God and a duty to the lawyer's client. Can those two obligations work together? Let's look at that. We'll look at that today and see. I think they can. So what does a Christian lawyer do? Well, first thing a Christian lawyer does is a central question: what's right and what's fair? There's hardly any legal advice or decision that doesn't center around what's right and what's fair. And the Christian lawyer has to focus on that always. But to take it beyond a platitude, the Christian lawyer has to put it in action, which sometimes can cause a little consternation, if you will, a little difference, a little disagreement between the lawyer and the client, or the lawyer and the lawyer's partners, for that matter. We see it worst in nasty partnership breakups. We see it in family litigation, where the emotion and pain of the moment is so intense that the parties lose sight of what's right and what's fair. Their animosity fuels their need to punish the other side. What can a lawyer do in a situation like that? Well, sometimes the client's legal and procedural rights are inconsistent with what's right and fair. But a lawyer has a duty to represent the client zealously, and sometimes that causes the lawyer to have to do the things that the law allows the lawyer to do that the lawyer doesn't want to do. In that case, about the best you can do is ask the client, is this something you really want to do? Is this right and is this fair? If the client says, I want to do it, then the lawyer has to decide, am I going to do it? Now, lawyers do things that they sometimes don't get pleasure out of anyway. Taking money from people. It's what you do. You do it. It's a victory. On one level, sense of accomplishment, victory. On the other level, you're taking money from people, as an example. You conduct your depositions. You do your investigation. You take depositions and you cause collateral damage with broken friendships, embarrassment. It's part of the job. The difference is, are you doing it, for what purpose are you doing it? If it's to achieve justice as you see it, and your client sees it, and you believe it, then it comes with the territory, so to speak. If it's to cause pain, which is sometimes what the client wants, sometimes I think it's tough to do. There will be a point where the Christian lawyer says to the client, I'm just not going to do that. You have to pay the price. The client may understand, the client may fire you. That's up to the clients I'm talking to. So here's the dilemma, if you will, in the secular world. We all know what Vince Lombardi said. Winning is not the main thing. It's the only thing. It will not be difficult to find a lawyer who lives by that oath. You have to decide if you want to live by that oath. Every client has to decide if he or she wants to hire a lawyer that lives by that oath. But sometimes, even though the lawyer is basically a hired gun, whether it's to write a contract or file a lawsuit, you have to consider whether being a peacemaker, an agent of healing, is not the best thing for the client. There again, if you do too much of that, the client will say, I want some guy who's not afraid for the fight. You either tell me you're afraid of the fight or you're not, and if you're not going to do what I want you to do, I'll have to get another lawyer. That's a choice we all have to make. But then again, being a Christian lawyer means turning the other cheek, right? That's what the Bible says. So how can you be a lawyer and turn the other cheek? Well, it's really easy if you think about it. It's not about being passive. Turning the other cheek might be not becoming involved and let the client become involved in this toxic situation that some litigation, for example, or even contract negotiation leads to. You can fuel the fire. Lawyers have been known to do that. But it's not what a Christian lawyer does. And I would suggest refraining from that is a more accurate definition of turning the other cheek. The problem comes when the client says, they're doing the dirty tactics, why aren't you? The Christian lawyer treats his adversaries and his clients with a profound sense of respect for human dignity. Clients are not commodities. The legal process is not a gold mine. Some lawyers see it that way, but the Christian lawyer doesn't. So if you see that your client is a human being with human dignity, and you need to remember that and see him in that or her in that situation, your job can be a calling. If that's your approach, you can love your neighbor you can serve God by loving your neighbor. You can approach the law as an avenue to love your neighbor, whether it's your client, your adversary, the judge, the traveler that the Samaritan found. So remember that when you're at the end of your rope with your client, that she's a human being who deserves dignity. Again, now this is directed to clients. Okay, we're back to Vince Lombardi, right? I know you like us on Sunday and at the parish party, But when it comes Monday, I know you're tempted to go for the meanest, crudest, cruelest, most mercenary junkyard dog you can find. Some clients are attracted to that. It's not a question of whether that's good or bad for your lawsuit and whether that's an effective way to advocate. But it is what some people consider as important. You know the lawyer I'm talking about. They make their mark by demeaning the other side. They take aggressive positions they probably shouldn't take. They cut ethical corners. They live, remember Cersei, Game of Thrones? You win or you die. As a client, you have to decide, is it worth it? Is there a better way to do it? Is there a more Christian way to do it? Which is not too far removed from, is the junkyard dog really the most effective way to prosecute my interests, if you will? So I think the client needs to think about whether he or she is living out on Monday what they so fervently believed on Sunday. So you can be Ramsey Bolton or you can be Ned Stark. You have a choice. A Christian lawyer respects the truth. I'm not going to spend much time on that because that's kind of fundamental to every religion, every human being, just like the law, the natural law. You got to tell the truth. Let's move on. The Christian lawyer spreads the gospel to his colleagues. A quote attributed to St. Francis of Assisi: preach the gospel, use words if necessary. Living a faithful Christian life is a message in and of itself that your colleagues and your clients will understand. They'll figure it out. It wouldn't even hurt to share your faith with them at the right occasion. Lawsuits require lots of close working together with both lawyers and clients. And when you're at my stage, it's mostly younger lawyers. You're supposed to mentor them anyway. Well, how about mentor them in the way of Christ? I found a good way to do that is become fluent in the Bible. I'm not claiming to be fluent in the Bible, but nevertheless, I have read it a few times. And I go to a Sunday school, and a Bible study. That's good. You can share little snippets from the gospel here and there without sounding like a proselytizer. Call it the spirituality of the ordinary. You don't have to have a big meeting to do it. It just slips in here and there. Okay, next question. How can the Christian lawyer climb the ladder of success in a way that's faithful to the lawyer's beliefs? So our dilemma is our work is a very strong source of our self-identity. The problem arises when our work becomes so important that it overshadows everything else. It's the sun around which all the planets revolve. This can lead the single-minded lawyer to a lot of bad places, basically. Again, tendency to forget on Monday what you so fervently believed on Sunday. And it's understandable, and this is not only limited to the law. It can beat you down with ungrateful clients, nasty, aggressive adversaries, a losing case, judges who don't quite get it. They may get it, they just don't get your side of it, which your client thinks means they don't get it. They either think the judge doesn't get it and he needs to be defeated or she needs to be defeated. I just think it can't be the judge's mistake, it's got to be your mistake. So it's easy to believe that you can't survive during the week by relying on what you learn on Sunday. That's not a hard thing to comprehend. That's our problem. So the problem is work as an idol. It leads to tangible problems: failed marriages, drug and alcohol addiction, this kind of state of mind of the more, push. It's kind of like, you're Sisyphus, you're pushing that boulder up the mountain. It's a need that will never be satisfied. It's a job that will never be completed. So I say, since we're talking about God, work is a God that will never save your soul, much less your sanity or your health. It is unworthy of your devotion. So that's fine. That's a platitude. So what's the alternative? Okay. So you ask yourself, is spirituality something that I can do in ordinary life rather than just save it for Sunday? If you look at Genesis chapter 3, what happened when Adam got kicked out of the garden? He had to go to work for a living. So it's not difficult to understand why. And in the aggressive community that we're in, the aggressive environment that our people like us in this church are in, it's hard to see how I just can't quite make it with all that Sunday business. I got to get down to, I got to be real here. We should try to integrate spirituality into our work lives. We've got to be mindful is what we have to do. So here's a definition of spirituality I like. One's orientation towards the divine, the awareness with which we orient ourselves to God. So with that in mind, work does not have to be spiritually meaningless. If you imbue it with this view of the presence of God, of treating human beings with dignity in a profound way, and you create these images that link your work life with your spiritual life, then perhaps you can see work in the law, probably a lot of other professions, as a calling rather than a curse. It's a better place to be in your own head, for darn sure. And if you see it that way, maybe life will be a little easier. We'll get to perfection in a moment and failure. So try to see the spiritual dimensions in what you do when you do it during the week. Because remember, the Bible tells us this a million times. God sanctifies the whole life, not just a portion of it, not just the worship part. How does a Christian lawyer address money? Well, that's a question for all of us. You don't have to be a lawyer to flirt with that. But we have our standards to which we have become accustomed and to which we're entitled because of our lofty standing as a lawyer. So money is important. But what happens when the money runs out? What happens when your law firm breaks up? What happens when your company gets sold and you're in-house and you've got nowhere to go? What happens when your clients fail, leave you, go somewhere else? Go to one of those charlatans that I was talking about earlier. The Ramsey Boltons of the legal world. Here's a place to turn to as a good, loyal St. Michaelite. For the power, God will provide. If he said it in one sermon, in one Bible study, he said it in just about all of them. Put your trust in the Lord, which I wholeheartedly agree with. However, being a sinner and a human being, I like to have an inventory of a couple of months of billable hours just to back that trust up, just to kind of be sure that it really all works. Okay, so we are human after all. But the point is, binding your self-worth to a paycheck and the size of it is basically debilitating and ultimately futile. it won't last unless somebody always is going to be make more money than you and have the bigger office than you and have a better standing in the community than you. So putting all your self-worth and how much money you make is not such a good idea. Okay, you overachievers. Okay, if you're an overachiever, raise your hand. I know you're out there. Okay, you've always been an overachiever, smartest kid in the class. You know yourself. You know who I'm talking to. As a law student who created the firm foundation for the top of the class to survive, I don't really fit that category, okay? I'm talking to you people, not myself. But somewhere in the back of your mind is this nagging suspicion that without your achievements, you're nothing. Maybe you think that. Some people probably do. If we remember the spiritual dimension of what we're doing, that perfection becomes less important. Which leads me to the final category. How does a Christian lawyer address failure? 2 points. Perfection is the enemy of spirituality. Point 2, failure is not a sin. You are not the only lawyer who's ever lost a case or gotten fired by a client or had an embarrassing defeat in front of a jury of 12 of your client's peers and then had to face the client after it. So counting on the excellence of your work is, again, I think another, to count on that excellence as your self-worth, to think the excellence and perfection will make you right and whole is not a healthy, it's not a spiritual way to approach life or the law. And I think we look at it this way. What does St. Paul tell us? We are saved by Jesus Christ, not because of what we did or what we could do or didn't do, but because he died on the cross for us. We are accepted and saved regardless of the fact that we're all failures and we're all sinners. And I think when you get in that crucible of the trial and the injunction and the closing, remember, you're saved anyway. You are accepted. I think it's a good way to live your life. So I think what I'm saying is work does not have to be spiritually meaningless. You have to look for that spirituality, I think, before you can figure that out. So in closing, really just look at the practice of law. This is a bigger picture. The honest practice of law is essential for an orderly and just society. So we are stewards of an orderly and just society. The law, when we understand it that way, can be exhilarating, especially when it's life-affirming. It can be difficult when it's life-draining. There's no question about that. Here's what Flannery O'Connor said as a way to balance the two emotions. You have to cherish the world at the same time you struggle to endure. So with that, I will assume that I haven't told you anything you don't know already, but hopefully I've brought home a few points that maybe you already know but haven't thought about for a while. And maybe we can all be better at negotiating this difficult life that we call practicing law and being a client. Thank you very much.